Please welcome back to the stage National NVOAD Board Member Zach Wogelmuth.
Hope everybody enjoyed your meal. It's been delicious. So it's my distinct honor and pleasure to welcome our keynote speaker today, Mr. Alex Amparo. Mr. Amparo is the Assistant Administrator for the Recovery Directorate at FEMA, and where he's been responsible for the timely delivery of emergency provisions to individuals and communities following presidentially declared disasters and major emergencies. His distinguished career in emergency management spans more than 2 decades at the state and federal levels. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Alex Amparo.
All right, so raise your hand if you don't have coffee, because I don't want to put you to sleep. And if you want to have coffee now, probably a good opportunity to do that. I'm so thankful that we started on time. It allowed me to go to the silent auction and outbid a couple people by $1. So, Mr. Chris Smith, that beautiful belt that you were looking at, sorry, buddy. No. Listen, no, honestly, I've been at this conference. I think I just, speaking with April, found out the last time I was at this conference was in 2010. We were in Kansas City. And ended up in the basement because there were tornado warnings. Now, there's tornadic activities happening to the north of us. We're safe here for right now. But I tell you, I've been impressed immensely by the participation of this conference. I think that there's a huge round of applause for the board members, for the host committee, for all the staff involved and all of the ones that involved in putting this together. So big round of applause for them. I'm serious about that belt. You know, the other part that's been very refreshing to see is the number of state and federal vows that are here. You know, I think that happens to be one of the best positions in the world. I started off as a state vow in Florida many years ago and have a lot of appreciation. So if you can show me your appreciation for them in terms of your applause, I'd love to hear that. So, yeah. Lastly, I'd say, not lastly, first in terms of introduction here. I've got a lot to say, folks. You know, one, I appreciate the invitation. It gets me out of D.C. And gets to talk to real folks, listen to some real music, love Randy Travis and such, you know. And it is quite refreshing, to be honest with you, to National NVOAD has been able to find among all the different organizations, among all of the different faiths, a common denominator in points of consensus that I think is an example of what good work is about. And I think that's just an example to a lot of folks, also to a lot of folks in our nation's capital, and for that I really commend you. It's not every organization that can do that, right? To think about our diversity in this room, and to think about what's expected of us post-disaster, the fact that we can agree on certain principles and say these are the things that we hold true, that we all agree to, and use that as a foundation upon which we can build and get ourselves better. I think that is, again, extraordinary, commendable, and I commend you for being part of this organization. You know, this morning at 8:30, we had an operations brief in D.C. We do it every morning at 8:30. We talk about what's going on in the country. We talk about our current threats that we have. We talk about the 11 joint field offices that are open right now, 20 plus disasters, 20 disasters that we're working. Over 4,500 people who we have in manufactured homes, but tens of thousands of people across the country that are in need. Last week, with some of you that may be out there, was in New York City for a recovery tabletop exercise. a recovery tabletop exercise that focused on an improvised nuclear device exploding on the New Jersey side, but causing issues into the city. And so we looked at, in this exercise, at recovery-specific activities. The exercise started at day 90. The second day started at day 365. And we got to talk about, what would it be like if we had 4 million people leave New York State and go into surrounding areas? How would we handle this type of event? And this is not, zombie apocalypse that, we exercised years ago, which you thought, well, that's not going to happen, or, something along those lines. This is real. We haven't had a major landfall. Anybody near Wood, start knocking, right? A major landfall of Category 3 hurricane in 11 plus years, right? But it was this area that got 38 inches of rain in a tropical storm, just a little tropical storm, in Allison, right, that just shut down the city. So on both spectrums, a Category 3 hurricane or above, or a tropical storm, there's a potential for devastation. Last year, as part of the national level exercise, we focused on Cascadia. It's Cascadia subduction zones. Those from that part of the region understand the issues. We met some folks from Seattle in the exhibit hall showing the pallet style housing. I mean, if you haven't looked at that exercise, you don't want to sleep tonight, you want to feel like you want to stay up, just read up into it, right? It's just a little something to keep you up. Right. The fact that Washington, Oregon, parts of California would be completely inaccessible, where we have to look at rebuilding routes for supplies and logistics going in. Right. The hazards that we're facing in this country, and we started talking about cyber. It doesn't take much. I mean, there are significant efforts going on to strengthen our infrastructure, to strengthen our resiliency, and protect us as much as possible from the threats that we are facing. The threats, international, and the like, right? And so a lot that's happening there, but that's a real vulnerability. We live in this world. This is where we're at today. I started off by saying, my last conference was 2010. Now, I will tell you, it was last 2010. The years before that, I think I probably had 5 in a row, so don't think I just show up every once in a while. Just haven't in the last couple, a little bit busy. There's also, again, in this new area of new threats, we also have a transition of government that's happening. Right? And there's folks that say, transition, get crazy. We have earthquake season every day. We have hurricane season come once a year. I know when tornado starts kicking up, we've got bad weather again, North Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas this afternoon. FEMA's job is to support a orderly transition of government. Continuity of government is one of the things that sets us apart from the rest of this world. Right? And so it's an area that we take very seriously, but there's a real opportunity here because this world has changed. I mean, it's changed from 2010 to now. And so how are we changing with it? What are we looking at? How are you protecting your infrastructure, your networks? What are you doing? Because guess what? If you're down, we lose. Last year we gave out $1 billion in financial assistance plus. 8,000 people plus in a transitional shelter assistance program. I can go on with these statistics. That would mean nothing if we did not have your support, if we were not in support of you. Because we would have thousands of people who have fallen through the cracks, who we didn't know about, who didn't make it to a disaster recovery center, who did not know what FEMA was, but they knew you or knew someone associated with you because you were there the day before the disaster, right? They've had history. So I'm not here to tell you, oh, listen, understand, there is a lot of appreciation that we have for the non-government sector writ large. There are things that you can do that were it not for you, our communities couldn't recover. Federal government can't come and hug you. Can't. Let it try, right? I was talking last night to a group of folks about some experiences post-Katrina. And there was a young man from Mississippi. Somebody know him. His name was Dan McGee. He was the individual assistance director there. And we had sent a lot of folks over from Florida to help and support the area. And Dan went out with a group called, at the time was the Christian Contractors Association, that was partnering with the AmeriCorps, and they were doing some blue roof and tarping and so forth. And he just went out today because he wanted to understand what it was like. And he says, Alex, he came back, and I'm like, how was your experience? He says, Alex, I just don't know, man. Now Dan has a good accent, so I'm not going to try that. He said, man, he said, you know, we went and we met with that homeowner. He said, and then we just sat in a circle and we held hands and we prayed, and there's just something came over me, he said. And he says, we couldn't do this without them. And I said, you're right, Dan, we couldn't, right? Because for that family, that's what they needed, right? For another family, they need someone to be able to talk to. They need emotional, spiritual care. There are things that you're providing that cannot be provided were it not for you. Right? So when I say, oh, by the way, there's also folks who wouldn't even trust me. Right? Understand? Or the logo I wear. Right? And our job is to provide emergency assistance to people who need it post-disaster, period. Right? We got hundreds of thousands of visitors, some tourists here, every year, every day, in cities every day. We have to shelter folks. We have to provide them feeding because that's what we do as Americans, right? They don't trust me, but they'll trust you. They'll do it. I mean, again, you were there before. They're associated with you. They know who you are. In some way, they're connected. And so I see our job in government sector, state, federal, local, is to figure out ways to get out of your way and make you much more successful. To figure out ways that we can support you, that we know where your resources, your capabilities are. To support National VOAD, to support this exchange, this integration. Let me tell you something. You know, there's no one saying, hey, we need to increase government. No one. And this is not party related. I haven't heard someone say that in a long time, right? It's always been, how do we become more efficient and reduce size of government? Always. Yet, when you listen to what I talked about earlier, our threats are just going up. I mean, we've got more threats. We've got more hazards. There's a greater expectation from the public. So how do you balance that? How do you balance that and for us to survive? I mean, how can we do that and manage 4 million people leaving New York City or supporting Cascadia? The only way that we get through this is by what we do in working together. That's the only way. You know, I've worked every major disaster in the country for the last 20 plus years. I remember probably the first one that I was involved in, and it was walking into, I was on EMAC from the state of Florida into North Carolina. I walked into a warehouse in Rocky Mount where I was met by, some may remember this name, Verdi Culpepper, who, I thought was, 7 foot tall and wear that, Superman, Superwoman, extraordinary. Learned what I knew about donations management from her, right? Our connection, our reliance on each other now more than ever is what gets us through those very tough events, what gets us through the ones that we don't know about, what gets us through this hurricane season that we're starting, that gets us through, tornadic activity that might happen and, we'd have to respond to. But when you hear about the team, know that you are a big part of that team. I'm here, team. A good friend of mine, some of you know, a good Mennonite friend of mine, would always refer to a term that he would call keystone species. Anybody heard that keystone species? Well, some folks are, texting and looking on their phone to try to check Wikipedia on that. I'll tell you what it is. Keystone species exist in nature, and they're creatures. I'm not calling you animals. Some of you exist in nature, and they contribute more than they take away. They're the type that if they didn't exist, that whole ecosystem would fall apart, or at least be very, very different. And as a form of flattery to the Reverend Myers, that's what he would say. I've adopted that. Now, I've given him his official plug one time. Next time you hear me talk about it, it will be something that I said, right, and came up with. But it's so true. When we look at where our infrastructure is in terms of emergency management, the non-government sector is those that are glue, that keep things together, that fill gaps, and were not for you, it would be completely different. We'd fall apart. Listen, a government-focused disaster will fail every time. It will fail every time because we don't have this expansion. We don't have the ability, again, to do the things that are needed post-disaster. So we're much better. We're much better at this when we're working in unison. And so this is what this conference is about. This is why I commend you on us being able to find points of consensus. My goodness. Think about all of the other areas if we could just find points of consensus as a starting point. It doesn't define us. That's where we start at. Right? So, all the good stuff. What are we doing about it? I'll talk a little bit about what FEMA's doing about it. Anybody give me a high sign if I talk too much? One, we're doubling down on our commitment to National VOAD. That's a given. Look, we've got to make sure that you as individual members and as a collective, we're supporting Chris Smith leading that through as the Director of Individual Assistance, but making sure that we are putting our resources where it makes a difference, supporting our vows in each, and supporting states and state vow programs throughout. That's a win for all of us. We believe that that is a big area. Yeah. We need to add simplicity. We need to add simplicity into the things that we do, right? And so we started with that, and anybody who's done the sequence of delivery from individual assistance, and you start here and then go here and then go there, and then there's an application, come back, and look, we've got to plan for simple, right? Because complex is the first things that go on a big event, right? You want something to fail, make it complex, right? I mean, what happens is people don't understand it, and why didn't they apply for assistance? Make it simple. And so to that end, a big initiative to focus on our program. How can we make that much more simpler? Hey, it can be hard for us to implement. That's fine. But it's got to be simple for a disaster survivor. It's got to be simple for our partners. And we need to make sure that that's vocal and communicate. We started with policy. We started with getting rid of 33 different memos that existed here and there, putting it all together in an IHP guide, individual and household policy guide, and now going in, hopefully towards the end of this year, with an IA, individual assistance program and policy guide, so that everyone knows, both survivor and partner and our staff, what our programs do and what they don't do. We've done something similar, but that's a big area for us. There's the issue of housing. Housing is an issue throughout our country. It's a pre-disaster issue. Pick your city. Pick your city. Affordable housing, listen, there's an issue now. And we know that post-disaster, that is also an area where we have to focus on. So as emergency managers, we need options. We want options. We want options that work, options that are executable. Cruise ships aren't an option if I'm in Missouri. Well, if I'm in Oklahoma. That ain't gonna work. That's not an executable option. So we've got to figure out what are executable options, and there's significant amount of resources and efforts and work that's happening across both the interagency within FEMA, within all of different FEMA, to focus on executable options. See, this is what there is an advantage, and this is this is how we utilize transitions to be able to take fresh look. This is an opportunity. This transition of government, we've got Brock Long that's been nominated by the president to become our next administrator. Brock's an amazing person, served as a state director in Alabama, lead for our hurricane program for Region 4, someone who I have spoken to personally about what voluntary agencies do, someone who hosted a conference specifically like this in Orange Beach, Alabama. We could not be happier with that leadership coming in. But he's going to want to take a fresh look. And we want to be prepared to be able to say, look, we've looked at this landscape. We've done this all these years, but we've always wanted to try this over here, right? And be able to have much more executable options. There's been a proliferation of non-Stafford disasters. You know, and that sounds good to us. But I'm sure you're saying, yeah, I do non-Stafford disasters all the time. I understand, right? But we've got to figure out how can we support the collective in these non-Stafford events. And so we're focusing on that. Things like Ebola, things like, and those are some folks from Michigan here, Flint, water system. You know, our infrastructure is throughout the country is in situations where we're going to see more situations like that, and we have to be ready. So we're, again, looking at putting our resources into that area as well. There are other areas, and we can talk more about those in one-on-ones, and you can bring Chris in terms of focus of what we're trying to do. And, you know, a disaster survivor, the last thing they want to hear is, we don't have authority to do this, or it's not within our authority, you know. They could care less about that, you know. And so we're working with our administration and in the Hill to be able to give us some more room to work in that environment. But I'd leave you with what I think is our collective work that needs to happen moving forward. I arrived here yesterday afternoon and got a chance to start walking around, and I saw a whole bunch of friendly faces, folks who I'd worked with in the past, folks who, in the job that I was in, we trusted each other, folks that I remember recently here. I was in Brownsville. We had unaccompanied children coming across the border. We had a lot of issues that were happening, and I was under instructions from our administrator to look at this as a humanitarian issue and to look at, you know, how are we supporting kids who are in detention. And there's a whole bunch of political and immigration issues, and I'm just putting that aside. I'm struck by the fact that there's a child in front of me who's crying, right? Who's in a holding cell built for 100, and there's 800 people there. And his instructions to me were, Alex, go, you know, take care of the kids. Now, I'm not a one-man show. I can't do that. There's only so much things that I can do. And so I noticed, well, let's figure out what we can. I thought about, well, what are they eating every day? And unfortunately, the food preparation area was a microwave. Again, all these folks, they're in microwave. They were kids too. There was no daily activity. They were standing there, sitting there. And I said, what can I do? And the employees there, a heart full of open, wanting to do everything that we can, but we're struck with what's in front of us. And so I picked up the phone at the time, through Mickey Kaysen, talked to Terry Henderson. He's still around? Yeah. Terry Henderson with the Southern Baptist. I knew he was in the area. And I said, hey, Terry, I got an issue here. He said, Alex, what you need? Terry, who I met everywhere, including American Samoa when he was up there, and Kim Burgo was there, and they were working together. And so, I said, Terry, I said, you got one of them feeding kitchens you can send? I said, no. I said, Terry, this is what I'm looking at. This is what I'm seeing. This is what my instructions are. And, obviously I could work through all the federal government, but I think I can explain to you how to put a person on Mars before I can explain the federal procurement process. So just, I said, Terry, can you help me out? He says, how many do you need? He says, I got 4 on the ready. And I said, okay. I said, send them. He says, where do you want me to go? And I said, I don't know yet, but I'll let you know when you get close, right? He did, right? Not only that, he sent shower trailers. He sent a child care trailer, right? That wasn't the solving of all of the issues, but it was helping what I saw in front of me, and that's all I could do, right? There's a whole lot of other organizations that were still working, the McAllen, Brownsville, and Catholic Charities, and still doing a whole bunch, but I saw something in front of me. Now, that was based off of a relationship, because we knew each other, right? It was based off of trust. But what happens when Terry's not there and Alex is not there, right? And that's what I say here. When I'm walking through and I'm seeing a lot of faces that I know, and I see a whole bunch of faces that I don't, right? Which is a great thing. Let me see. Raise a hand, first time at this conference. Look around, folks. That's a blessing. That's a future right there, right? And so we've got to figure out, if we're going to take this relationship to 2.0, it is how are we transferring these relationships from relationships that are personal, because I kind of like that person, or they're nice, or, to ones that are organizational. Because those organizational ones are the ones that last, regardless of who is there. Ultimately, it's for a disaster survivor. I can tell you stories like that with every organization. I didn't know there were so many. Last time I was here, there wasn't 67 member organizations in all 50 states, or 56 state and territories represented. But there are stories like that, and it's based on, you know it yourself, because I bet you a belt that I got from Chris Smith. I bet you that while you were here, you had a conversation with somebody about an event, right? We date ourselves that way. We say, oh, remember when we were in the Florida 4, right? Remember when we did that and we were in, the tornado? Joplin? Yeah, you were there too. Yeah, I remember, right? So we date ourselves. So let's take this and take ourselves into a new level, right? Challenge your organization to get and have a partnership with another organization. Put it in writing. Have an expectations the same way that you do points of consensus. Negotiate an MOU to serve as a foundation of what that relationship's going to be. And then be able to build from there, right? This is what's going to take us into our next level. This will allow us to integrate sufficiently to handle that worst day in America. And I think this is what we do this right. I think this is what America expects from us. Us, right? I know what reliance we have on you. We're going to work to be a good partner. By the way, let me just go back. I missed one point here. I think it's amazing when one member organization deploys in support of another. I think that is a level of partnership that is exponential. Not twice is good, no. That's exponential, right? When one organization in a selfless way goes in to support another, that happens. Let's make that happen in terms of a commonplace. Let's see that formalized EMAC among non-government organizations. Let's have government go support non-government organizations. Let's do that in a way that, look, there's a lot of folks smarter than I who can make and see some of these things happen. But those are the things I think that will take us to really a next level. And so with that, I've yapped enough. I thank you. It really is an honor for me to be here among all of you. All you guys honor me by the work that you do, and I look forward to seeing you out in the field. Take care.
Trust and relationships. Thank you, Alex, for sharing not only a challenge with us, but also for sharing your valuable insights and of course, for the work that you've done to bring survivors back home after disasters and really promote recovery in communities all across this country. So thank you so much. At this time, I'd really like to invite all of you to just give a round of applause to our FEMA folks. If we can have all our FEMA folks just stand up, we want to recognize you. We appreciate the partnership that you have with National VOAD, and it truly is a partnership. Look around and get to know these people. These are truly amazing people that are doing good work, just like you and I, and really have a heart for the survivors. So thank you all for what you do. So at this time, I suppose it's still necessary to invite Catherine to the podium to announce the winners of the silent auction, even though we already know one winner. So Catherine, over to you.
Good afternoon. Hope you all have had a great week. I was happy to see that the silent auction had a lot of bids and a lot of items. For those of you that don't know, the revenue from the silent auction goes to support our board representatives, our state and territory board representatives on the board, and allows them to travel to conference and to other meetings throughout the year to represent you as state and territory VOAD. So it's a worthwhile cause, and I want to say thank you to all of our donors and those of you who won. The winners are already behind me, as from the reactions in the crowd. So please take note if you are a winner. These slides will be up after we break. Please proceed directly to the registration desk to pay for your item and pick it up. We need to close out all payments by 2:30, so please do that immediately following. And thank you again to everyone that donated, and congratulations to our winners.
Please welcome to the stage National VOAD President and CEO, Greg Forrester.
Well, folks, has it been an incredible week? Yeah. It takes all of you to pull this off. It takes all of you participating with each other, having the conversations. We've had to chase you out of this room every single time we've sat down for a meal. I love it. That's the way it's supposed to be. We're supposed to be networking. We're supposed to be pulling together. So in addition to that, there are some here that represent organizations and partners that have gone ahead and made it possible for us to put on this event. So I want you to help me thank them. So let me read through some of our sponsors for this week. The UPS Foundation, the United Methodist Committee on Relief, UMCOR, AmeriCares, Airbnb, the Buddhist Tzu Chi Foundation, World Renew, Catholic Charities USA, Disaster Distress Helpline, ICNA Relief USA, Islamic Relief USA, Mennonite Disaster Services, OnStar, American Red Cross, Granger, Presbyterian Disaster Assistance, and UCC Disaster Ministries. All of them contributed to go ahead and help us put this function on. Please give them a round of applause. I also want to give special thanks to Mennonite Disaster Services, the videos and the promos and the music and all that you've been seeing that has helped us put on some great visuals this week that are going to be available for later distribution and use by your agencies, have been given to us and donated by Mennonite Disaster Services. So Mark and Paul and Kevin, just know that we really appreciate what you have done for us this week. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge our hosts. So the Texas Host Committee and volunteers have been working for a year to put this on and make sure that we had enough people here to greet you at the door so that those smiling faces were there directing you. And there were a couple at the door that says, listen, if you don't have your ticket, we're going to throw you out. Which also helps us keep track and make sure that everything is functioning well. But they did it with grace, and they did it with love. So I want to thank the host committee for the tremendous job that they did, because without them, we would not have gone ahead and made this possible. So please give them a round. So we always start planning for the next event. We actually have for the next 2 years, we already know where we're heading. So for next year, we're going to be in Providence, Rhode Island. And the year after that, we'll be in Nashville, Tennessee. We're looking at our different venue options now for 2020 and 2021. If you have suggestions, just know I'm willing to go ahead and receive them into my inbox. We've already been in negotiation for a few locations, and we'll be talking that with the board on Friday to start deciding where we're going to be after Nashville. But as part of our transfer, I want to invite the chair of the Texas VOAD, Lorraine Wallataw, and the chair of the Rhode Island VOAD, Jay Burdick, for the traditional passing of the hat. Please come forward.
Okay, great, thank you. While he's making his way up here, I want to ask Carol Flores and Damien and Anna and Marla to come up here, and then any of our volunteers that have been here, if you could just move forward to the stage, we'd appreciate that. So howdy, y'all. We are so glad that you have been here, and on behalf of the state of Texas and Texas VOAD, we are so glad that you've been able to be here with us this week. It has been a pleasure to have you in Texas. I hope you have experienced some good Texas hospitality and enjoyed your stay here, and we hope that you come back again someday, but I'm sure the chair of my committee would say, not for a couple of years. She's got to get a little rest. So anyway, so Carol Flores. Yes. This is the lady that is responsible for the fact that we had that wonderful high school National Guard that was here to present our colors along with the singer. She's been responsible for, in her committee, for all the invocations. She's got recruited all the volunteers, and I noticed they're being shy and didn't come up here. But we have had lots of volunteers. I'm going to name a few, and then I'll call out some others, but I know I'll miss you. My apologies. But Linda Hudson, Lavon Harrell, Yvonne Lonzo, Amy Hogan, Cynthia, Evelyn Casey, the Latter-day Saints who were guarding the door that was trying to keep Greg from coming in. You know, we thank you. And if you are a volunteer or if you're a part of the Texas VOAD, would you please stand also? And I also want to call out Marla and Anna, who's not up here. Oh, okay, that's right. They helped do the silent auction. Damien and his work with the One Star Foundation, he's my right-hand man, literally. We want to thank you for all their great work, and it's been a privilege, again, to have you. So, the tradition... The tradition with passing from one state to the next. Last year, Minnesota graciously gave us a wonderful winter hunting hat on behalf of Minnesota and the great time that we had here. So you're in Texas now. So you know what's probably coming. So, welcome.
Thank you.
We look forward to going to Rhode Island.
Pascali was wondering if they were going to give me a 10-gallon hat for my 5-gallon head. And they did. Texas VOAD set the bar really high for next year. We in Rhode Island are looking forward to hosting you. Hope in a couple of hours you'll be able to come to the reception in the Regency room, taste some, hopefully, Rhode Island cuisine. It's going to be good. We're going to do a little trivia game about Rhode Island. There'll be a couple of prizes to be given out, maybe a libation or two as the conference winds down. I would encourage you now to start putting into your individual organizational budgets enough money to come to Rhode Island next year. That's always a challenge for everyone. But if you can, we're going to be there from Monday through Thursday as usual. Maybe Friday, Saturday, Sunday, stay around and go down to Newport and see the mansions, or go over. I hate to push Massachusetts, but Cape Cod's right down the street, has some lovely places too. We have great beaches in Rhode Island, but it's going to be a little chilly that time of year, so I'm not going to push the beaches. So I look forward to all of you being there, both my friends and my new friends, and we'll all see you in Rhode Island next year.
I like the hat.
Yeah, me too.
You just got to watch out for Alex. He's after belts, and the hat might go with it. So, so don't forget the closing reception that we have at 3:45 today. You have workshops still this afternoon that you attend, so we can get some more working knowledge. Please remember to use the app to rate your workshops. So if you haven't been doing that on an ongoing basis, we will use those evaluations to help us determine and look at ways that we can improve both workshops and also how we do the scheduling and those kinds of things. So please use that app to go ahead and rate the workshops as you move forward. That lingering thing that's been going on, we do need to clear this room right after we finish, and we'll give you a couple minutes to talk to each other when I'm done. But really by 2 o'clock, we need to be out of this room. They're clearing it for another event afterward. Just for me, I'll see you at the reception, but just know how much I appreciate everything that you do. And please let us know at National VOAD how we can help you in resourcing in the field. If you're encountering situations that you don't know where to find the answers, let us help you go ahead and do that. We know through each other there's nothing we can't accomplish as long as we continue to work alongside of each other. And even when we have disagreements, we find ways to agree. And we have done that so tremendously in this conference. Let's go ahead and carry this forth through our nation. Thank you, and God bless.
Bye, bye, Miss America.